little-known violinist, Christoph Poppen. The music on Mortimer is based on a geometrical analysis of Bach's Partita in D minor for solo violin. This analysis, by German professor Helga Thon, assigns numeric values to the duration of notes, the number of bars, and the German letter notation of the partita. In doing so, she claims to have discovered the complete text of several liturgical ceremonies encoded in the notes. The CD presented these hidden texts superimposed over the original music. The result was strangely melancholy, dark, haunting, and very, very popular. Quite a few music critics attacked this disc. They didn't buy Professor Thon's analysis, dismissing it as a combination of numerology and canny marketing. Their caution was not without basis. Numerology is a slippery slope down which many a fine mind has slid to its doom.
And many more not-so-fine minds.
Amusing anecdote from my own experience. Back in the early 90s, before the internet took off, one of the more popular online bulletin board systems was a service called Prodigy. I bought an account on Prodigy so I could join a fraternal interest group and gossip with fellow members around the country. One day, a stranger appeared on our bulletin board. Right away, I knew we were in trouble. This fellow, whose name was Gary, began spouting all kinds of apocalyptic nonsense about worldwide conspiracies, secret societies, and devil worship. At first, we tried to be polite. We questioned his sources, corrected his histories, logically refuted his claims, and tried to behave in a civilized manner. But instead of soothing him, our attention only made him worse. His conspiratorial warnings became urgent, approaching hysteria. He began to threaten people who disagreed with him. To coin a phrase, Gary went all uppercase. But his most urgent warnings weren't about the gays, the Jews, the Rockefellers, or the Illuminati. According to Gary, the greatest enemy of mankind was Santa Claus. Gary claimed to possess a secret numerical formula that proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that Santa Claus was an avatar of the Antichrist. Intrigued, we pressed Gary to reveal his formula. In doing so, we walked right into his trap. We should have known he had a book to sell. I fell for it. I sent him the $15. Less than a week later, the book arrived. Above an ominous photograph of the Washington Monument was emblazoned the title, 666, The Final Warning. Inside this privately printed 494-page monster, Gary reveals a simple geometrical formula, which he claims was developed by the ancient Sumerians. This formula assigns successive products of 6 to each letter of the alphabet. A equals 6, B equals 12, C equals 18, etc. Imagine my dismay when I applied this ancient formula to the name Santa Claus.
You know what, I'm going to put this plate in the kitchen because I've got nothing else to do. So I'll be back in 2 minutes.
Number of the beast.
Probably like 30 seconds.
Reported to the stunned members of our interest group that Gary was right after all. There could be no doubt that according to the unimpeachable wisdom of ancient Samaria, Santa Claus was the Antichrist. I then went on to point out several other names which, when submitted to Gary's formula, also produced the sum 666. Names like St. James, New York, and New Mexico. Soon the bulletin board was filled with discoveries like computer, Boston tea, and, most sinister of all, sing karaoke. Gary left us alone after that. I got my $15 worth. But Gary is hardly the first person to connect secret codes to the Bible. People have been looking for Easter eggs in the Bible for hundreds of years. The Hebrew mystical tradition of Kabbalah can be described as a geometrical meditation on the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Old Testament. The advent of computers has made the application of numerology to the Bible fast and efficient. The latest spate of Bible searching was instigated by a book published in 1998 by Michael Drosnin, a former Wall Street Journal reporter. His book, The Bible Code, applied a skip cipher in which every nth character in a text is combined to form a message.
Alrighty, I'm back, and it's still going.
Drosnin claimed to have discovered predictions of World War II, the Holocaust, Hiroshima, the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin and both Kennedys,
So what I'm going to do,
the moon landing,
just for a little bit,
the Oklahoma City bombing,
because I've got some time to kill,
Clinton,
I'm going to do a little bit of shiny hunting
and the comet that collided with
on Pokemon Moon.
also
I don't have a capture
found
card,
giant earthquake in LA,
but,
a
you know,
meteor hitting the
you've
Earth,
got more than enough to keep you
and
entertained.
Armageddon, all scheduled to occur before the end of the last decade. The Bible Code spent many weeks on the bestseller lists, spawning several sequels and dozens of imitators. The Bible has certainly attracted its share of crackpots.
That's my favorite line in the whole
hardcore
video.
egg hunters,
The Bible has certainly attracted its share of
the
crackpots.
tenacious
No.
the
Really?
zeal of those who seek the answer to the ultimate literary puzzle.
I'm going for a shiny Mary.
This conundrum that has squandered fortunes, destroyed careers, and driven healthy, intelligent...
If I get it, it'll actually be really hot if I happen to get it on
and
stream.
beyond. Who wrote Shakespeare? The essays and books devoted to the Shakespeare authorship problem are sufficient to fill a large library. Several such libraries actually exist.
I wonder how many eggs I'll manage to
Not
hatch.
even a day-long tutorial, much less an hour lecture, can begin to do justice to this complex, bizarre, and dangerously tantalizing story. Nevertheless, for the unacquainted, I will attempt to summarize the issue in a few paragraphs. The undisputed facts of Shakespeare's life and career could be scribbled on the back of a cocktail napkin. We know for a fact that a man named William Shakespeare was born in 1564 in or around the village of Stratford-upon-Avon. We know that he had a wife and at least 3 children. We know he bought property in Stratford, was involved in several lawsuits with his neighbors, and died there in 1616, aged 52. We also know that during those same years, a man with a last name similar to Shakespeare worked as an actor on the London stage, eventually becoming co-owner of some of the theaters there. We also know that about the same time, a number of most excellent poems and plays were published in London under the name Shakespeare. We do not know for a fact that the landowner in Stratford and the actor in London with a similar last name were one and the same man. We do not know for a fact that either man had anything to do with the poems and the plays. All we know is that those poems and plays have, in the 400 years since their composition, come to be regarded as a pinnacle of Western culture. The works attributed to Shakespeare appear to have been written by a man or woman who knew something about just about everything. They're filled with references to mythology and classic literature, games and sports, war and weapons of war, ships and sailing, the law and legal terminology, court etiquette, statesmanship, horticulture, music, astronomy, medicine, falconry, and, of course, theater. Therein lies the problem. How could a farmer's son of uncertain schooling, from a mostly illiterate country village, a man of practically no account at all, wield such encyclopedic learning, with so much eloquence and wit, so much wisdom and human understanding? For the first 150 years, nobody questioned the traditional history.
First one hatching.
Then, in the late 18th
We're hoping it's
century,
pink.
Reverend James
Is
Wilmot,
it a
a
shiny?
distinguished scholar who lived just a few miles north
Doesn't
of
look
Stratford,
like it. No.
decided to write a biography of the famous playwright. Dr. Wilmot believed that a man as well educated as Shakespeare must have owned a fairly extensive library, despite the fact that not a single book or manuscript is mentioned
Second
in his
one.
will. Over the years, he speculated, some of those books must have found their way into local collections. And so, the good Reverend Doctor scoured the British countryside, taking inventory of literally every bookshelf within 50 miles of Stratford. Not a single book from the library of William Shakespeare.
What's a Skinner box game?
Neither were there found any letters to, from, or about Shakespeare. Furthermore, no references to the folklore, local sayings, or distinctive dialect of the Stratford area could be found in any of Shakespeare's writings. After 4 years of painstaking research,
I can't click on links. I don't touch the mouse during the eclipse.
That only one person contemporary with Shakespeare
Too easy to screw it up.
had ever demonstrated the wide-ranging
Fourth
education
one.
and expressive talent needed to compose those poems and plays. That man was the multilingual author, philosopher, and statesman, inventor of the scientific method, Chancellor to the courts of Queen Elizabeth and King James, Sir Francis Bacon. Dr. Wilmot never dared to publish his theory, but before he died, he confided it to a friend,
Last one in the first
James
batch.
Powell, who, in 1805, repeated it to a meeting
Come
of
on.
the Ipswich Philosophical Society.
Be so hype.
The members of the society were suitably outraged.
No, not shiny.
The scandalous matter was quickly forgotten. Then, in 1857, a lady from Stratford, Connecticut, published a book called The Philosophy of the Plays of Shakespeare Unfolded. In this book, Miss Delia Bacon, no relation to Francis, claimed that the works of Shakespeare were written by a secret cabal of British nobility, including Sir Walter Raleigh and Sir Philip Sidney, as well as Sir Francis Bacon. Delia Bacon's book electrified the world of letters. Battle lines were
So now we transfer those merits,
and the
because they're
heretical
not
Baconians. Literary societies
shiny, and we go for
scholarly
some
journals
more.
were formed to debate the evidence. Hundreds of pamphlets, newspaper articles, and essays were published defending each side and ridiculing the opposition with that self-aggrandizing viciousness peculiar to tenured academics. Armed with her explosive book, Delia Bacon journeyed to Stratford-upon-Avon and, unbelievably, obtained official permission to open Shakespeare's grave. However, when the moment came to actually lift the stone, Delia's self-doubt precipitated a catastrophic nervous breakdown. She later died penniless in a madhouse. Around 1888, things began to get a bit out of hand. U.S. Congressman Ignatius Donnelly of Minnesota became interested in the Shakespeare controversy. One day, browsing through his facsimile copy of the First Folio of 1623, he noted that the word bacon appeared on page 53 of the Histories and also on page 53 of the Comedies. He also noted that Sir Francis Bacon had written extensively on the subject of cryptography. Donnelly began counting line and page numbers, adding and subtracting letters, drawing lines over sentences, circling words, and crossing them out. The result was a complex and virtually incomprehensible algorithm, which he claimed was invented by Bacon to hide secret messages inside the First Folio. The greatest Easter egg hunt in the history of Western civilization had begun. Here are just a couple of the sillier highlights. A doctor named Orville Owen of Detroit constructed a bizarre research tool he called the Wheel of Fortune. This wheel consisted of 2 giant wooden spools wrapped with a strip of canvas 2 feet wide and 1,000 feet long. Onto this canvas, he glued the separate pages of the complete works of Bacon, Shakespeare, Marlowe, Greene, Peele, and Spenser, together with Burton's Anatomy of Melancholy. By cranking the spools back and forth, Dr.
7.
Owen could quickly zip across the pages in search of clues and cross-references. Employing a large team of secretaries and stenographers, Owen claimed to have uncovered a complete alternative history of Elizabethan England.
At least I'm doing
as well
something
as
right
several
now.
entirely new Shakespeare plays and sonnets. Listen to this hidden verse, supposedly penned by the mighty bard himself, which inspired Dr. Owen to build his Wheel of Fortune. Take your knife and cut all our books asunder.
It looks purple.
Leaves on a great firm wheel, which
Or pink.
rolls and rolls.
Pink
And
wool
turning
instead
the
of
fickle
white.
rolling wheel, throw your eyes upon Fortune, that goddess blind, that stands upon a spherical stone, that turning and inconstant rolls in restless variation. After publishing 5 thick volumes of this rubbish, Owen announced the discovery of an anagram,
Not that
indicating
one.
that Bacon's original manuscripts were buried near Chepstow Castle on the River Wye. Owen spent the next 15 years.
It's like odds of 1 in 500
$1,000
or so.
excavating
I've got a
the
shiny
river
charm,
with boat crews,
which is an item you unlock in the game which increases your odds of getting a shiny.
anything was found. A fellow named Arnsberg wrote an entire book based on the analysis of the significance of a
Nope.
suspicious crack in the tomb of Bacon's mother. A ray of sanity finally appeared in 1957. To those familiar with the science of cryptology, the name William Friedman needs little introduction. During World War II, Colonel Friedman was the head of the U.S. Army's Cryptoanalytic Bureau. He is credited with cracking the Japanese Empire's most sensitive cipher. After the war, the colonel decided to apply his expertise to the study of the Shakespeare ciphers. He interviewed several of the experts in the field and prepared a detailed scientific analysis, which he published under the title The Shakespeare
Rolf,
Ciphers
hello, welcome in.
Examined. His
We are
conclusion?
just finishing up the eclipse.
Bunk.
Well,
According to the standards,
we're into the second half of the
science,
eclipse,
not
and
one of the hidden messages
we're also
that
hunting
clearly
for a
discovered
shiny Mary
Shakespeare's works
in
was
Pokemon
plausible.
Moon.
The rules used to extract
Just for
these
something to
messages
do
from
while
the
we wait
text
for the eclipse to
were
run out.
non-rigorous, wildly subjective, and unrepeatable by anyone except the original decipherer. The people involved.
Because wouldn't it be nice to get a shiny Pokemon
They were
during the
channeling
PB video?
conceptions. They were trapped in a labyrinth of delusion, mining order from chaos. Anglers in a lake of darkness. Lear, Act 3, Scene 6. You would think that Friedman's cold and ruthless exposure would be enough to silence the heretics once and for all.
Well, we're on a comfortable pace for a PB, so
TV specials and websites.
there's a few things you have to do after the eclipse finishes.
Keep right on coming.
So it isn't a PB until it's a PB, but it should be a PB.
Is not only the preoccupation of cranks and
By roughly
idiots.
8 minutes.
A substantial number of
I think.
respected authors and Shakespeareans have expressed serious doubts about the traditional origin of the plays. The list includes Nathaniel Hawthorne, Ralph Waldo Emerson, Walt Whitman, Henry James, Sam Clemens, Sigmund Freud, Orson Welles, and Sir John Gielgud. Living skeptics include the artistic director of the New Globe Theatre, Mark Rylance, Michael York, Derek Jacobi, Kenneth Branagh, and even that most revered and scholarly of contemporary Shakespearean actors.
I haven't had
Anne
peanut butter in
Rice.
years.
The current leading candidate for the authorship is Edward de Vere, the 17th Earl of Oxford, a theory first proposed in 1920 by an English schoolmaster with the unfortunate name J. Thomas Looney. What is it about Bach, the Bible, and the works of Shakespeare that inspires this intense scrutiny? Nobody's looking for acrostics in Chaucer or Keats. There are no hit CDs of the secret chorales of Wagner or Beethoven. For the answer, we need to recognize the unique roles which the Bible and Shakespeare...
No, I don't like Nutella, and we don't really have Reese's in Australia. No, not allergies. I used to love peanut butter as a kid. But it's just... I stopped having it when I was like 10 or 11, and I just lost weight and felt better. It's not healthy.
The King James Bible exemplifies the meaning.
It's very fatty, peanut butter.
It has been called
so I don't have it.
Of English prose, the very greatest achievement of the English language.
But yeah, we don't have Reese's in Australia. Like you could go to specialty places that would have it, but it's not generally just available in supermarkets.
Have learned to read by repeating the phrases in this, the only book their family possessed.
Right,
our
that's 11.
Constitutions and our laws have been profoundly shaped by its cadences and imagery. But even
no, it's not.
Of the King James Bible, compiled by a committee of 46 editors over the course of a decade, pales before the dazzling legacy of the Swan of Avon.
No, I was already looking.
The lowest estimate of Shakespeare's working vocabulary is 50.
Besides, with chat lag, I would say it was shiny before you would.
3 times that of the King James Bible.
Nope,
and
not that one.
Twice the size of his nearest competitor, John Milton.
That's
his
12.
poems and plays were written without the aid of a dictionary or a thesaurus. They didn't exist yet. It was all in his head. When Shakespeare had a thought for which Elizabeth had no word, he invented one. The Oxford English Dictionary lists hundreds of everyday words and phrases
Not that
which
one.
made their first appearance in the pages of the Bard. Addiction, alligator, assassination, bedroom, critic, dawn, design, dialogue, employer.
Merit's not a useless Pokemon. Ampharos is pretty cool.
Gossip, hint, hurry, investment, lonely, luggage,
14.
manager, switch, torture, transcendence, wormhole, zany. Hamlet alone contains nearly 40 of these neologisms. Who today would have this audacity? This giddy exuberance.
Diggersby. I haven't got a shiny Diggersby, I have to say.
English author even approaches Shakespeare's facility for coining new words. Sir Francis Bacon. In the modern era, the record holder is Charles Dodgson.
Alright, so that's 15.
Lewis Carroll, who, interestingly, also happens to be the second most quoted author in English, after Shakespeare. Everyone has been profoundly molded by the influences of the King James Bible and Shakespeare. Like it or not, all of us peer at the world through the lenses of these great works. They are the primary source documents of modern English thought, the style guides of our minds. Contemplating these dazzling jewels of wisdom and eloquence gives rise to an extraordinary feeling, a potent, rare, and precious emotion with the potential to completely upset your life. An emotion powerful enough to make a man abandon his wife and children.
Mario and the letter Z.
Lay down his possessions.
Melee.
Follow his heart without questioning. That sweet, sweet fusion of wonder and fear, irresistible attraction, and soul-numbing dread known
Z, yes.
Awe. Awe is the grail of artistic achievement. No other human emotion possesses such raw, transformative power, and none is more difficult to
See, Yeron's got my back.
Few and far between are the works of man that qualify as truly awesome.
How else am I meant to pronounce melee?
It is awe that convinces a rabbi to spend a lifetime decoding Yahweh from the Pentateuch. Awe that sends millions of visitors each year to the pyramids of Giza, Guadalupe,
Melee?
Mecca, It was awe that drove poor Delia Bacon to her doom. Now, please don't come away from this lecture thinking that the key to awesome game design is the installation of Easter eggs.
Mario?
Games with their contrived Easter eggs and cheat
Oh,
codes
Melee.
are like the Battery of the Month Club. You have to trudge down to the back of the store to get what you really
Yeah,
can.
it's Melee.
If superpower is what people really want, why not just give it to them? Is our imagination so impoverished that we have to resort to marketing gimmicks to keep players interested in our games? Awesome things don't hold anything
Number
back.
16.
Awesome things are rich and generous. The treasure is right there.
No.
One afternoon, I was sitting alone behind the counter at that old Radio Shack store. My boss had stepped out for some reason. An elderly woman walked through the front door. Like most of our customers,
17.
she was shabbily dressed, probably on a fixed income. I assumed she was there for her free battery. But instead, she placed
Not
a
that one.
portable radio on the counter. This little radio came from the days when they boasted about the number of transistors inside on the case. It was completely wrapped in dirty white medical tape. The woman looked at me and asked, "Can you fix this?" Slowly, I unwrapped the medical tape, peeling away the layers until the back cover of the radio
18.
fell off, accompanied by a cloud of red dust. The interior of the radio was half eaten away by battery leakage and corrosion. I looked at the radio. I looked at the old woman.
19.
I looked back
Also
at her.
Prime.
I reached behind me, where the expensive alkaline batteries were hanging like prescription medication, and removed a gleaming 9-volt cell from its gold blister pack. Then I pulled a brand new transistor radio from a box, installed the alkaline, and helped the lady find her favorite station. No money changed hands. She left the store without saying a word.
20.
Awesome things are kind of like